Hello everybody, this is another video of Mr. Dwight Doodles, and this time this is to support your homework, which is all paper 2 focused, which is B5, homeostasis and control. So we're going to look at nervous system today, but I think it's important that we just reflect that communication in living things inside animals is done via two ways. We have the nervous system and we have the hormonal system. Hormonal system, remember hormones are proteins, amino acids. They're chemical messages that are sent from an organ or a gland to a target organ, and they attach to the cell membrane and provide that message. But we're going to look at those at a different time. So let's focus on the nervous system. Now, the nervous system is an electrical communication, not like electricity within a wire, but this is to do with the movement of ions within the body. Now, with the nervous system, it all comes connected to the brain. And the spinal cord, let's change to pink. The spinal cord does what it says on the tin. It is a cord, and information goes up and down to the brain. So let's pop this chap's little, there we are, little face. Let's give him an ear. So you can see the spinal cord running up and down the spine. Now let's say that we want a message delivered in order to move our hand away. So let's say we've got a Bunsen burner. There's the fire, and there's this chap's hand there, and we want to move the hand away. So what will happen is, because it's getting hot here, this is a stimulus. Now the stimulus will be picked up by something called a receptor. A receptor receives information. So the stimulus is heat, but it could also be light. It could also be pressure. Your receptors are your sense organs: eye, ear, nose, tongue, skin. And then what happens is the receptor in the skin will send the information to the spinal cord. And this is called a sensory neuron. Sends it to the spinal cord. When it gets to the spinal cord, I'm going to show you in a little bit more detail of what's happening in this section here. So your spinal cord, if you're looking downwards on the top of the head, that's what your spinal cord looks somewhat like. And we've got this sensory neuron bringing our message into our spinal cord. Now, when it goes into the spinal cord, there's a gap between the neurons, and that gap is called a synapse. And we'll come back to the purpose of the synapse shortly. One of the reasons why there is a gap and it has to jump across is because once it makes that transition and jumps across, it can't go back down. So once we've got a sensory neuron bringing it into the spinal cord. From the spinal cord, it has a relay neuron that takes it up to the brain. So there it is, up to the brain. Brain makes a decision, comes back down the relay neuron. But when we come back down, here's the relay neuron that's found within the spinal cord. We have another neuron that takes the electrical impulse away from the spine. This is called a motor neuron. And then this would take it back to the hand, and then it would tell the muscle in order to contract and move away from the fire. That is known as a conscious nervous decision. Sensory neuron, synapse, relay neuron, up to the brain. Brain makes a decision, down the relay neuron again, back, another synapse, motor neuron, back to the hand, where the hand makes a clenching movement and moves away from the fire. Okay, Now, the other thing we need to be aware of is reflex actions. Reflex actions, they're different from a conscious nervous decision, because if it's conscious, it involves the brain. But sometimes you need to react very, very fast. Because if you think your arm's about 1.5 or about a meter long, then we're going to add another meter in order to get that's 2 meters that the impulse has to travel. That's quite a long distance, and it takes time in order for that to happen. So a reflex action doesn't involve the brain. It simply comes from a sensory neuron around the spinal cord and back down a motor neuron, thus reducing the distance of the communication, thus reducing the time, thus keeping you safe from danger. So the final thing to help support you with your homework is this synapse. So what on earth are we talking about here? So here's our sensory neuron, and that's connected to a relay neuron. So as this, and I say this is the electrical impulse, moves down the sensory neuron, it comes to this area. This is called a cleft, and it sends a chemical from this area, the presynaptic cleft, over to the postsynaptic cleft. This chemical attaches to this neuron, and then it turns it back into another electrical impulse. So it goes electrical to chemical, and chemical back to electrical, all occurring over the synapse. And for the higher level, you just need to be aware of it goes from electrical to chemical back to electrical. And that is the nervous system in a nutshell. The other part is the required practical. Now, the required practical is nice and straightforward. It is where you rest your arm across a desk. So you sat down here. There's your arm. And someone dangles a ruler. It is the reflex action or the ruler drop test. And someone will drop the ruler. You'll catch the ruler. And you will have a distance, because obviously it is a ruler. But we need to convert that into a time. And so what you're given is a conversion sheet. So on a piece of paper, the conversion sheet will convert the distances to time. Generally, the independent variable is the right hand versus the left hand. So there's the left versus the right. Or it could be caffeine. So your independent variable would be 5 concentrations of different caffeine solutions. You would obviously repeat for each hand 10 times. That's 10 on the left, 10 on the right. That would increase your accuracy, bring you closer to the true value. And control variables would be apply no force to the ruler stick, same distance between thumb and forefinger. You would want to have students or volunteers of the same sex, same age, same athleticism, whether they've consumed caffeine before the event, whether they've practiced before, so they're used to the action of catching the ruler. It's nice, straightforward, required practical ruler drop test. Generally, it's left hand versus right hand. Because it's left and it's right, it's a category, it's not continuous. So it would be a bar chart if you were to draw the graph of left versus right. 10 on the left, 10 on the right. Students or your volunteers, 10 volunteers, same sex, same age, same athleticism. Have they had caffeine prior? Have they slept prior? And that is the required practical.